All right. Happy Halloween, everyone. I appreciate you being here. Today's webinar on how to build credibility. I appreciate your time. Let's go ahead and let's get rolling. So, in 2018, the Gallup poll was conducted, and only 22% of respondents stated that they trusted their leadership and that leaders had clear direction. Now, I know this was 2018, almost 5 years ago, but I have a sneaking suspicion that it's not getting any better. Okay. But with that, there's some encouragement. Those polled that did trust their leaders, they found that there's an upwards of 6 times more engagement, which is something that we want, especially when it comes to maintenance, is having our folks engaged, whether it's our department or the plant level. So that's good news. And also, 68% of people see someone that has expertise in their field as a thought leader. And so to be a thought leader, it helps with credibility. With that, I appreciate you being here. My name's Joe Anderson. I'll be your host today for this webinar. I've been doing things in maintenance for a little over 25 years and got some certifications. Again, I appreciate you joining me. And what we do at Reliability X is we're a company that seeks to equip people with the tools and the know-how to be able to be a catalyst for change within their organization. We do a lot through training, mentoring, and coaching. That's our main hub. And then if you need further help, we're here to help you with that as well. And don't be afraid to reach out, ask questions, and we appreciate that. So in today's webinar, one of the main keys when it comes to building credibility is a show of competence. As we know, if 68% of people that have expertise in their field are thought of as thought leaders, then competence is going to be key. And a part of building trust is competence. We need to be someone to rely on, and you have to have at least that level of credibility within your organization if you want to truly be best in class. However, it's the case that many folks in the industry, they lack the credibility. Now, whether it's something situation they walked into and didn't handle it well, or they've kind of done it to themselves, that remains to be seen. But there's two questions that I want to discuss today, and we'll see if we can't answer those questions. The first question is, why do we lack credibility? And so we'll focus on some of the ways that we lose credibility. And then the next question again is, how do we develop credibility, or how can we build it back? Even if we've lost credibility, there's many ways that we can build it back. But with that, I want to take a few minutes and do a quick poll. There's about 4 questions. We're going to launch the poll now. If you would answer those questions, and then we'll get going. All right, we should be finishing up the poll now. I appreciate your responses. It looks like, we're about half and half on some of those questions, a little more lopsided on some than others. But hopefully we can help start to address some of those concerns today. So I appreciate you being here. All right, let's go through some ways that we lose credibility. The first way is failing to do what we said we were going to do. What this is a lack of follow up or not seeing a project or initiative through. A lot of times it's because we get pulled aside and asked to do something and we don't write it down, those types of things. And don't ask them to send us an email so that we don't neglect those things. But even the smallest things, when you're asked to do something, when we don't follow up, it leads to people doubting your credibility. The next is giving excuses as to why something did or didn't take place. And typically this results to blaming, or we say we don't have time, or whatever the case may be. And this starts a vicious cycle. So we have to be aware of this. The next is keeping people in the dark. So a lack of communication. As we all know, when things aren't clearly communicated, the rumor mill starts and the story gets bigger and bigger. People start telling themselves stories, and it becomes this mammoth thing when it really was nothing. It was just the fact that we didn't communicate clearly, or someone didn't communicate clearly and started the rumor mill. But when this happens, this again leads to lack of credibility. The next is showing incompetence. So having a lack of direction or a lack of purpose. As we know, 22% of people believe that there is direction and purpose, which means 78% of people don't see the clear direction set by leadership. Or having a know-it-all attitude. A know-it-all attitude we'll address a little later, but honestly, a lot of times that's because of a lack of knowledge. Another one is thinking meetings are a solution. I think a lot of us can relate to this, and throughout our careers, being in meetings all day, and how work doesn't get done, and you can't truly solution things in a meeting. The solutions are out at the source of the problem. And then not educating others. Our goal as leaders, especially in the maintenance world, is we should be bringing others with us, and looking for opportunities to educate at all times. We want to elevate people. That's the goal. So credibility is king when it comes to wanting to do anything. And if we look at things from a plant level perspective, credibility is built through competence. And we have to have some know-how and at least some level of technical trades in the maintenance department to have the respect of the people that we're leading. If we don't know anything and we can't make decisions because of our inexperience, that leads definitely to a lack of credibility. Competence, when we have that competence, it promotes confidence. And there's a big difference between confidence and arrogance. Confidence is the ability to execute with your skill set. Okay. Arrogance is that kind of know-it-all mentality a lot of times, or we think too highly of ourselves because we know very little. Confidence gives you the ability to take charge and set direction. When you're confident, you typically know where you're headed, what we're going to be doing, and those types of things. And then setting direction. When we set direction, it opens up the ability for us to execute. People have to know where we're going. We know the current state. We're all in the current state, but how are we going to get to point B? And what is point B? Where are we headed? That helps a lot when it comes to execution. And then to drive change in culture, a majority of that comes down to the execution. Now, there's a leadership aspect, there's a lot of those things, but if we were to walk out on the floor and start solutioning problems, it changes culture immediately. People say this person is very serious. They know what they're doing. Our problems are going away, and they get on board fairly quickly. So if you want to quickly change culture, a lot of times it comes down to our ability to execute. It's great to get people motivated and excited to do something, but then when there's no execution, this is where an implementation fails. And so we have to be able to go out and execute. And of course, that culture then helps drive the results. And that's what we want at the end of the day. We need better performance. We need a higher safety standard, better quality product, whatever the business need is. From a corporate level perspective, we deal a lot in business cases, which that requires a level of competence about the business and about what's going on in your facilities. In manufacturing, it's really key to understand the value of losses and the opportunity you have to go after with your plant assets. Okay. When you're making a case to corporate, our goal is to maximize the use of these assets, and we have to be able to speak to that. And perhaps one of the biggest problems we see is that maintenance historically is seen as a negative, and that prevents us from getting the respect we deserve. So as a result, a lot of times from a corporate perspective, we're not even thought about in the organization. We're a necessary evil, we're a cost center, those types of things. But we can change that. We can show that we can drive profits, and that culture truly, if we break it down many, many times, your culture's determined in a plant by the culture that's in your maintenance department, which means maintenance can drive or be the center of excellence for a lot of the change that's necessary within the facility, which is a great thing if we want to truly be great. It gives us the opportunity to do great things. So the goal here is you have to educate others, but first we have to build our own skills, our knowledge and experience, and be able to speak to that. Okay. We can't go in there not knowing anything and hoping that it takes off. A lot of us throughout our careers, we have been duped by people that didn't know what was going on. But over time, you get used to seeing those that talk and those that do. And there's a big difference. Okay. So let's focus on 4 areas. There's a lot of areas where we can build credibility, but I think these 4 are some of the most important from a maintenance perspective to understand and to execute on. So we'll talk through how to communicate. The way I look at things is there's typically 3 levels in an organization. So how do we communicate if it's the same message to all 3 levels of the organization? Being better at follow-up, being better at executing, and then understanding some leadership things like setting direction and understanding the business and why those things are important. So first, communication. With communication, again, I see it as 3 levels of an organization. Typically, it's corporate level management, then your plant level management, and then the shop floor. So, for example, if we're selling an organization on a reliability initiative, okay, and let's say we are a maintenance manager and we want to try to get people on board, okay, well, first we need to sell corporate level leadership with this initiative. Then we have to get the plant level leadership on board. And then we have to be able to speak to the shop floor as well and what's in it for them. And so those 3 levels of the organization. First, with corporate, With corporate, like I said, business cases are huge. Pilot programs are typically an easy sell if you know what you're talking about. You always kind of want to start with the pilot to prove it out, um, to create a poll so people are asking questions, right? As you start to see success on an individual line, people at the plant are saying, well, when are you coming to my line? I want help. And then corporate people are asking, well, what are you doing differently? So pilots help a lot. Okay. But we need to be able to align our message first off with the organizational objectives, which requires us to know what the organizational objectives are. So if we don't understand first what the organizational objectives are, how can we align what it is that we're wanting to do? Okay. And then we've got to use opportunities to educate. When you're educating at the corporate level, they don't need all the technical details. But what they need to see is your ability to communicate at a high level by using examples from the past or whatever, so that they have confidence that you'll be able to see this through. Okay. So, for example, let's say your plan is currently 35% OEE within a facility and your cost per unit is $1.32. Okay. Well, by reducing losses in your system, it might be easy to gain 15 points of OEE, right? And you can extrapolate out the math. There's ways of doing it when you understand the business, right? But if my sales pitch basically to corporate then is by becoming more reliable through the plan I've set before you, which means we have to come in prepared with the plan, okay, to get them to understand what it is we're trying to do. We can easily gain 15 points of OEE by reducing downtime and solving some of our issues. By estimation, this will lower our cost per unit by 17 cents across the 10 million units that we produce. Okay, that's a profit of 1.7 million. It'll also put people at less risk of injury while keeping our quality high. All I need is your support for this initiative from an accountability perspective and an investment of $100,000 to invest in the tools and training necessary to provide the value. Now, you have to be able to back up these details. You work with your finance group, all that type of stuff, but we have to be able to speak in those financial terms, even if it's just our ability to communicate some of the successes that we're seeing in the plant. What does that mean to the bottom line of the business? Okay. So at that level, we want to speak a lot more in financials, and a lot less in technical details, unless you're asked for those technical details. Now, you're going to run into people with ego, like I said, especially when you start getting into management. There's a lot of people that, like I said, 78% of people know that their leadership doesn't have direction. So that shows a lack of knowledge to some extent. Okay. But Einstein created a formula to understand ego. And that formula was ego equals 1 over knowledge, which means if I only know one thing out of all the information that exists in the world, I know one thing, that means I'm 100% ego. Okay. And the reason why some of these people have big egos is because they don't take the time to learn. No one's really taught them any differently, or no one's challenged them at what they do. There's no self-awareness. People don't know what they don't know, right? And that's kind of being at the top of the learning curve. When you think you know it all, but there's so much information out there to know, it's hard to be that way. And then people take no time to self-reflect, okay, to understand. So we have to educate others. By educating others, we give them more knowledge. And as we continue to educate them, we can continue to inundate them with knowledge. And the more knowledge they have, the ego starts to come down a bit. Now, you're always going to have people that don't care, don't want to hear it. That is going to be the case. But you can still allow your credibility to prove them wrong. Okay. The goal here is constant education and training. We have to help them overcome. We have to know more, right? And that's the challenge. At the plant level, it's peer level management. If I'm a maintenance manager, that's the plant manager, the ops manager, the safety manager, the quality manager, supply chain or logistics, whoever. It's that leadership team that we need to be able to speak to. Okay. And a lot here at the plant level, especially if we're 35% OEE, which means things are failing all the time, there's a lot of stress. Plant manager's worried about his job. I just had a friend of mine that got fired for not getting results as a plant manager, right? And so it happens quite a bit. And so there's that stress. And then that rolls downhill to that leadership team. So a lot of people are worried about that. There's stress about hitting numbers. They want that security, be able to take care of their family. So when we speak to them, we need to talk about that reduction of stress. And we can educate either using points of examples of things that have happened in the past or things that we're going through currently, and show them that there is a way to get around it. So, for example, remember when that auger failed and it cost us 3 days of production? Right? We didn't hit our numbers, and you thought you're going to lose your job because of this continued downward trend. So you're bringing up the topic, letting them understand, but then it's, well, what if I have a solution? And what if I can help get us out of the situation? Would you support me in this if I can help you get out of this? All right. So if I can show you where your losses are and we have the ability to go after those losses and get them out of the system, life would be a lot better, wouldn't it? So, having that level of conversation at the peer level helps tremendously. Okay. Most people will get on board with this. First off, they see it as, you're going to do the work and make my life easier. I'm all about it. Right. Well, if we're going to be a catalyst for change in the organization, we need to be the ones spearheading it. We have to be the ones grabbing the bull by the horns. What we need to understand in life is that no one is coming to save us. We're here in this situation. What are we going to do about it? Right. And so somebody has to take initiative. Why not be the maintenance manager? Take the initiative. Ask those questions. Provide solutions. And that's the key at this level. Then at the shop floor level, a lot of it is about reducing quality of life and all the firefighting, reactive maintenance, running around like a chicken with their head cut off type of mentality. Now, understand there's certain people that thrive in these situations. Your superheroes always thrive in those situations, but that's because we've celebrated failure. And so people look forward to those situations. And a lot of times it's because they feel undervalued. So when I feel undervalued and I know I can get attention, then I want to thrive in those opportunities that provide attention. While being down for long periods of time and coming in and getting things running gives us that ability to feel valued. So we have to understand that as leaders, that a lot of those types of people, they're seeking value and how they provide value. So we have to change our perception of how value is provided to the organization. But a lot of times it's around, well, I'd like to build your skill set, right? I'd like to make life easier for you. I'd like you to be home for your kids' recitals and ball games and things like that, and not having to work overtime, right? And then it's, aren't you kind of tired of getting your butt kicked by machines all day? Like, what if we can make life better? What if we can make it more predictable? What if we can make it more fun? Right? Those types of things where we're reducing their stress right? Understand that there's about a 90% divorce rate in the maintenance shop. And we will, especially men, will sacrifice everything for the sake of the job. That includes our own marriages, our kids, and everything. Because we have this inherent ability to want to fix stuff. And we won't let it go until we fix it. And so a lot of times we're driven into overtime situations where we miss things. And it creates a lot of stress. Then we take that stress home. And so we don't want to provide those environments. What we need to do is set direction as leadership, give people a plan, let them see it, all the tasks, all the abilities, give them the ability to own a piece of it, own a certain process, take ownership in that process, build a skill set, find newfound value that they can add to the organization. So when we speak to the shop floor, they don't, there's people that care, but not to the extent that, say, corporate level does about the financials. It's more about, all of this is about what's in it for me. It's just hitting it from different perspectives. And we have to understand that. And it goes a long way with your credibility, especially when people realize that you actually do care. And as a leader, when it comes to trust, credibility, those things are highly important. Then we have follow up. Follow up is a very simple thing, but it's an often overlooked or neglected thing that can make a huge difference when it comes to credibility. And when we're asked to do something and we don't have a notepad or a pen on us to write it down, have them send you an email. Say, hey, I appreciate your question. I'll follow up on it, but can you please send me an email? Because I'm human. By the time I get to my office, I'm going to forget what you asked me because I'm going to have 10 other people that approach me. So if you would, I would really appreciate it if you'd send me an email. I'll do my best to follow up on it soon, but please send that email. It's important. And keep a daily list. I use sticky notes a lot. My wife hates it. I have sticky notes all over the place in the basement. But it's my way of keeping track of all the things that I need to do daily. And so I know that I need to follow up on this. I need to follow up on that. I've got to do this work. I need to get this test done. Right. And it helps us. And if we know that we execute on the daily stuff and we're continually following up, which leads back to communication. Once we follow up, we have to communicate back. That does a lot for developing your credibility. How many times have you been that person that went out to the floor and fixed a problem? And now everybody calls you to go out and fix issues. That's because you've established credibility in their eyes. So just be aware as you follow up, develop more credibility, solve problems, that more and more people are going to come your way. So we have to get better and better at managing it. Okay. But that's a good thing. And we have to take advantage of that. That allows us to drive the necessary change that we're looking for. So go out and get the data, do your follow up, seek data, or have people go out, but verify. I don't know how many times I've been burned by somebody that told me something was done and I didn't verify myself, only to get caught off guard in some other meeting that it wasn't actually done. And so ensure that you verify yourself and then communicate back. Right. So follow up is, again, very simple thing, but it can go a long, long way. Next is leadership. There's two aspects I want to cover when it comes to the leadership piece. First thing is setting direction. And then the second thing is understanding the business. It's not enough as a maintenance manager to be a highly skilled technical trade. The problem is we promote, and I am one of these people that was promoted because of my technical trade, not my ability to lead people. Okay, we need both. Okay, we need both. And I don't know how many times, right? I got promoted. My first promotion into maintenance management was because I was a master at one of the core machines within the facility. And because I was really good at fixing this machine, they promoted me. And then I get promoted and realize I don't know anything and I have to lead these people. And so a lot of companies, they'll promote, which is great, but they're promoting their highest competent mechanic, not their highest competent leader. Okay. So understand that. When it comes to setting direction, we need a plan. Whether it's for your department, whether it's for a plant, whether it's a corporate level plan, this plan requires some key components. Okay. A plan is a roadmap. If I said I need to get from point A to point B, so I'm in Pennsylvania and I need to get to California, and I just said, we're going to California, and that's all the detail you get. You can't cheat and use your Google Maps, right? What's the probability that we successfully make it to California at least under a certain given period of time, right? And so our plan needs to be detailed enough to know every turn, every angle, every road to take, right? We need to have a plan at that level. At first, it seems daunting, but it's honestly not too difficult. So, in order to set direction, there's a few things we need. First thing is we need to set a vision. Okay. Of course, that vision needs to align with your overall organizational objectives and any plant level plans that are in place. But it's highly unlikely. Now, it's not a zero, but it's highly unlikely if you go to your plant manager and say, can I see your plan for this facility? Where it has a vision, a goals, all the objectives, and it's broken down into tasks at the task level. Can I see your plan? Okay. You're probably going to be the only one with one. But that's great news when it comes to credibility. So set a vision. A vision is where do we want to be? Where are we going? What's point B? We understand point A. Point A is the current state. We all know we're living through it. But what's point B? Where are we going? And then your mission statement is how we're going to go about doing that work to get to point B. And then we need to set goals, and those goals, so goals are things that can be accomplished within 3 to 5 years. If your time frame for your vision is 3 to 5 years, the goal should be accomplished within 3 to 5 years. Okay. And then we break those goals down to objectives. The objectives are basically smaller goals that can be attained within a year or so. Okay. And then we break those objectives down into the tasks. And the tasks, that's your action plan or strategy. Strategy is an action plan. Those tasks are your action plan to go out and do over a given period of time. Okay. Having a plan isn't a strategy. Okay. A lot of we like to mix those two terms up a lot, but a strategy is an executable plan of actions that seek to achieve whatever the aim is. And so if our aim is set forth by our vision, those task level initiatives, that is your strategy. Okay. With that, let's provide an example. Okay. For example, in 5 years, we'll develop into the organizational standard in maintenance, reliability, and sustainability, empowering our facility to bring value to our customers. Okay. So in 5 years, we want to be the organizational standard. The reason I always set this first is because I want to be the best in the organization. Once I attain being the best in organization, my vision will change to being an industry leader. We will become industry leaders in this realm. Okay, that's your vision. Your mission, how we're going to do the work. As a unified team, we'll develop a reliability culture which will achieve our business priorities through empowerment, engagement, and training. So we're going to empower people to do the work. We're going to get them engaged, and we're going to make sure they're equipped to do all the work that they need to do. This is how we're going to go about doing it. We're going to empower, train, engage. Okay. Then we create a set of goals. Reliability is the input to accomplish desired outputs. A lot of times we'll have desired outputs. We'll have a safety metric, a quality metric, some growth metric, some cost metric, some service metric, some culture metric. The question is, all those are lagging indicators. What's the leading input or the leading indicator to help us attain those outputs? And that input is reliability. Okay, so I always make sure to point that out. And then our goals: establish a world-class PDM program, establish a world-class lubrication program, etc. Right? In 3 to 5 years, I want to have a best-in-class program for each of these things. Work execution management, reliability engineering, whatever it is. Okay. So now I have goals. I know in 3 to 5 years, I'm trying to accomplish these goals. And if I accomplish these goals, I know that I achieve my vision. Okay. Then we take those goals and we break them down into objectives. So, for example, if I have a world-class PDM program as a goal, well, my first objective might be a world-class ultrasound program. I'll need a world-class oil analysis program, a world-class motor circuit analysis or electrical signature analysis program, world-class infrared program, vibration, whatever that is. We got to break all those PDM technologies down. Those would be our objectives. Okay. Then we want to break down each one of those objectives into tasks that need to be accomplished in order to attain the objective. For example, if I want a world-class ultrasound program, well, if I don't have the technology, first task is I got to acquire it, which means I need to build a business case, sell the organization, get the technology acquired, right? Maybe I need to send some people out to training. Then I have to develop routes. Maybe I do air leak surveys, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on and on and on for tasks. Okay. And as you work through this, you'll realize you'll be adding some tasks because you missed some stuff. That's okay. We don't need every single detail of every little task jotted down. What we need is direction. You create the sandbox. This is our sandbox. You allow other people to go play within the sandbox. They'll go out and accomplish this stuff. You just delegate the tasks. Once we get the technology, we send people to training. The next task is, well, we need to go develop routes for our assets. That's a part of our strategy. The other piece is developing a robust asset strategy. Okay. Do we have our criticality analysis completed? Does our strategy address failure modes? Do we have great precision maintenance practices? Are we using PDM? If we want to be the best in the world, there's no way to even compete, let alone just be successful within our own organization if we don't have great precision maintenance practices and we don't use PDM technologies. PDM technologies give us superhuman abilities, and it gives us the ability to see where all the problems are. If I was to walk you out to a typical conveyor, and you and I are just standing there, and I say, tell me what's going to fail next. There's a 99.999% probability that without PDM technologies, unless it's super run down conveyor, that you're going to be able to tell me what's going to fail next on that conveyor. But with PDM technologies, I can give myself the ability to see what's coming, right? And so that's important. Do we analyze failures? Do we cut bearings open, clean them up, try to understand the failure mode in which it failed so that if we missed it on our asset strategy, do we go back and improve our strategy? Do we train operators for operator care? Right? All those things. What we found is about 75% of a maintenance mechanic's day is spent adjusting machines. Machine adjustments are not breakdowns. The way we define a breakdown is any unplanned stop 10 minutes or more and requires a part to be replaced. So if we're not replacing parts, which means nothing broke down, why are we spending so much time out on the floor? What we find is it's what we call process failures, which is a loss, any unplanned stop, 10 minutes or more, and does not require a part to be replaced. What this shows is there's a few things. It's either design issues or it's operator competency issues. And so we're out adjusting machines for operators because we haven't taken the time to train operators well enough on their own equipment. What that means is it would be like the operator of a vehicle calling your mechanic and saying, "Hey, can you sit on my lap and turn this steering wheel for me?" And that's exactly what we're doing a lot of times in these manufacturing facilities. And so we have to be aware of that. Excuse me. Next is execution. So now that we have a plan, we have an asset strategy, we need to go out and execute. Okay. So to divvy up some of the tasks among people, have them take ownership in some of these things and go out and execute. Your job as a leader, remove roadblocks, obstacles, anything that they have in their head that's keeping them from doing things, right? Might require some hand holding, right? Let me show you how. And you go out there with them, which means you need to know. Okay. And focus on areas of loss. A lot of times that's highly important, and that's your largest ROI. And then offer solutions to other people's problems. What you're going to find along the way is you need help from operations. And so if you can help educate and train them, a lot of maintenance mechanics don't like this, but I always wanted my maintenance mechanics to train operators. We need to get away from being out there tinkering with equipment and spending more time trying to find defects while the equipment's running, so we can spend our downtime getting the defects out of the system. I think a lot of times we do this thing, what we call PM on Saturday when the line's down, and we waste the whole day doing PM, not doing any corrective maintenance to get the defects out of the system. And it just creates a vicious cycle. Or we'll stop in the middle of a PM, say, "Hey, this bearing needs replaced," and start replacing a bearing, only to never finish the PM. And then next week, the same PM comes out and we get a little further down, never finishing it. And it just starts a vicious cycle. And so we need to understand that. And then again, handhold, understand every part of the business, work with others to solution their problems. When you do that, you get them engaged and bought in to being on your team, because you will need them at some point. So we have to have credibility with them, right? Teach them along the way, educate and train, and then become that go-to for the plant problems. When you start to see that, that's when you know credibility is taking over, and credibility is king. Okay. And then we need to understand the business. And I'll share with you an example that I talk through a lot with a lot of maintenance managers. Every morning they have some meeting, say an 8 a.m. meeting, where they go in and talk about last night's production. And in that meeting, it's blame maintenance, have a nice day. For example, they'll say, "Well, we didn't hit our numbers last night because we're having problems with this machine. And we called maintenance and it took them forever to fix it. And so we didn't hit our numbers." Okay. So if we knew our design rates of each line, if we knew our buckets of loss and we had our losses defined, okay, and you know what you should have produced versus what you actually produced, what you'll find is maintenance is a very small piece of that. And there's other losses in there that are eating your lunch. For example, you could say, last night we should have produced 10,000 units. We only produced 3,000. We had a 30-minute breakdown in maintenance, so that cost the company 100 units, which means if we wouldn't have had that breakdown, we would have produced 3,100 units. But my question to you is where's the other 6,900 units? Now, again, I get it. My breakdown cost us 100 units, but we're missing 6,900 units, and I'd like to start exploring the possibility as to where those units went. And you do that the next day, and you do that the next day, and you do that next day, and then you offer. You say, what I'm finding is 50% of our losses are due to minor stops, which are any unplanned stop 10 minutes or less. And so if I can help you by helping to centerline machines and train operators, and we can get minor stops and process failures under control, we could probably get back a good portion of those units that we lost. Would you be willing to help me with that? That creates a different scenario. When polled, 66% of you said that we get the blame. And this is part of the reason why we get the blame. It's two reasons. One is because we typically only have two downtime buckets, which is unplanned downtime and planned downtime. And therefore, if it's unplanned downtime, it equals maintenance. But that isn't true. If we break down the unplanned downtime buckets, we'll find minor stops, process failures, speed losses, quality losses, all these other things. The breakdown is just one of those. And so as we break those down and we start educating people on lost buckets, they'll start to see where a lot of their units are going. And then you can help offer those solutions. That gives you huge credibility, but you have to understand that part of your business. Okay. So I kind of ran through an example. Here's another one. But I won't run through it as I've already kind of listed it. But it shows you some of the math and thinking behind things. So this is a part of the business we need to understand, and we need to speak in these terms. Okay. And knowing that if we can increase our reliability through the help of competent operators and a robust maintenance strategy, we can eliminate a lot of these losses out of our system. This is what the outcome could be. And instead of walking into the meeting and getting blamed for everything that goes down, we start actually working towards solutions. And no one gets the blame because we're all to blame. Reliability is everybody's problem. It's not maintenance's problem. It's everybody's problem. And so when we start to see that everybody has a problem, then nobody has a problem. And the blame starts to go away. And then you go out and start solutioning those things, make the problems go away. It does a lot for credibility. So with that, let me ask, if I had a clear and concise plan coupled with a robust asset strategy, and I always followed up and communicated with everyone clearly, and if I solution problems and trained everyone that wanted to be trained that I possibly could that would listen, and if I was known for always getting work completed and solutioning losses and increasing throughputs, would I have the credibility needed in your eyes to drive the facility to the next level? And that's what it's all about. And with that, we would like to help with your credibility building journey. If there's any way we can help you, we do a lot of coaching and mentoring. We do a lot of training. We also have a self-paced maintenance and reliability course based on Ramesh Gulati's best practices book. It's a great book and a primer to many certifications. So it'd be great to get you to go through it. We also are starting public courses, and we do a lot of private training. Sign up for our newsletter, engage with us, subscribe to the podcast, to the YouTube channel, reach out to us at ask@reliability.com. We'd love to hear from you. And with that, again, I appreciate everyone being here today. If there's any questions, we'll kind of take those now. All right. No questions. Let's see. Got a few coming up here. If we come from the down floor and we are called to give directive to the people we're with. So what we're saying is, how could we be credible if you come from the shop floor and now we have to give directions to people? So say you get promoted to a supervisor. Um, I take it that's the question. So again, I think doing all these things, right? Even as a supervisor, if your maintenance manager doesn't have a plan, help him develop a plan and set direction. At least for your crew, um, develop a plan, at least a smaller plan, and the things that you can control. Set direction, follow up on stuff. Okay. Um, that's the key there. And then you have to have a level of competency as well. But when you get promoted, typically it's because they saw your competency. How would we develop credibility as an outsider from a corporate level down to the plant level? That's a great question. That too is having a plan. When you're at the corporate level, though, this is typically where you get into things like asset management and having a strategic asset management plan that outlines some of the guidelines and things that are necessary for the plant level to create an asset management plan to be successful. How to address failure modes, how to do a criticality analysis. Pick one plant that you know has a champion in it, and work with them to fix their maintenance strategy, or maybe pilot a line at the corporate level. Piloting a line, and teaching along the way goes a long way to credibility, because when you start to get results, they say that person knows what they're doing, and that's a person that I want. Why can't you come over to my line and do that? So from a corporate perspective, if you can find a plant or at least a line to pilot, um, execute a strategy, uh, help them set up a robust maintenance strategy, help train operators and develop operator competencies, it would go a long way. All right. Any other questions? Awesome. With that, again, I appreciate everyone for being here. Have a happy Halloween. Be safe out there. We appreciate your attendance here today.